There was one night in Freddie Mercury's life that not even Queen, not his friends, not the press, no one could explain. A night when Freddie Mercury vanished without warning, leaving only a cryptic message on a phone line that chilled those who heard it. For decades, rumors spread. Some said he ran from the pressure. Others said he was following a secret. But the truth, the real truth, was far more emotional, far more human, and far more dangerous than anyone imagined. This is a forgotten story of the night Freddie Mercury disappeared, and the mysterious phone call that still echoes today. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss our emotional stories about Freddie Mercury. It was 1985, midsummer in Munich, a city that had become Freddie Mercury's personal escape, his private storm, and his creative temple all at once. The night was warm, the sky low and hazy with humidity as Queen prepared for another heated rehearsal session at Musicland Studios. But Freddie wasn't there. At first, Roger Taylor laughed. Assuming Freddie was late as usual. He'll walk in with some dramatic story, he joked, adjusting his headphones. Brian May gave a small, tense smile. John Deacon simply checked his watch. But an hour passed. Then two. Still no Freddie. This wasn't like him. Not when music waited. Not when responsibility called. Freddie could be chaotic, unpredictable, dramatic, but never absent without reason. Brian tried Freddie's home number. No answer. Roger called his local hangouts. No Freddie. The assistants checked the clubs, the cafes, the gym where he sometimes jogged at night. Nothing. By midnight, the mood inside the studio had changed. The laughter was gone. The band members exchanged glances that carried the weight of unspoken fear, the kind that grows in the space between friendship and helplessness. Brian finally said it. Something's wrong. John, always quiet but deeply perceptive, simply nodded. At 1:17 a.m., the studio phone rang. Everyone froze. A cold, metallic click. Silence. And then, Freddie's voice. Soft, breathless, unsteady. Don't look for me tonight. Roger's heart dropped. Brian stepped closer to the receiver, eyes narrowing. John leaned in, listening for clues behind the trembling tone. Freddie inhaled sharply. There's something I need to face alone. A rustle, wind, footsteps on gravel. Then the line went dead. Roger slammed the table. Brian whispered, "What is he doing?" John felt his stomach twist. He knew Freddie's voice better than almost anyone. And what he heard in that call wasn't drama, wasn't arrogance, wasn't performance. It was fear. For the first time in their career, Freddie Mercury was gone. No warning, no explanation, no destination. And the message he left behind felt like the beginning of a storm. Munich after midnight had a strange personality, equal parts dream and danger, beauty and shadows. The city glowed faintly under street lamps that flickered like tired candles, illuminating cobblestone paths worn by centuries of footsteps. On most nights, Freddie Mercury loved walking these streets. They gave him anonymity, a kind of freedom no stage could provide. But on this night, the darkness felt different. He wasn't strolling. He wasn't wandering. He was escaping. Back at Musicland Studios, tension grounded everyone in place. Roger Taylor paced the control room like a caged storm. Brian May leaned against the mixing desk in a state of control panic, and John Deacon sat with his arms folded tightly, silent, observant, reading emotions like sheet music. The message Freddie left, just a handful of trembling words, hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. Don't look for me tonight. There's something I need to face alone. Roger was the first to react, slamming his palms against the table. This is insane. He doesn't just disappear. Not like this. But even as he said it, he knew that wasn't true. Freddie did vanish when he needed space, emotionally, spiritually, but never with fear in his voice, never sounding hunted. Brian replayed the memory of the call in his mind. His breathing wasn't normal. He sounded shaken. His voice softened with worry. Something must have happened before he called. John didn't speak. He simply nodded toward the door. An unspoken agreement filled the room. They wouldn't involve police, they wouldn't alert the press, and they absolutely wouldn't let word leak out. Freddie's privacy was sacred, especially when he was vulnerable. The three men split up. Brian grabbed his coat and rushed out into the night. Roger followed seconds later, his car roaring to life. John stayed just long enough to gather any clue Freddie might have left behind, anything that could explain the way his voice had cracked over the phone. At 2:48 a.m., one of the assistants returned from the parking lot with something in hand. A white paper napkin, crumpled at the corners, faint handwriting barely visible under the fluorescent lights of the studio. "Found it by the back door," the assistant said. "Looks like Freddie's." Everyone gathered around as Brian unfolded it carefully, as if it might tear under the weight of their worry. Lyrics, only a few lines. Raw, unstructured, emotional. The kind of writing Freddie only did when something was tearing at him from the inside. Running from a shadow. Following a voice. "Not mine. Not anymore." Roger swallowed hard. "What shadow?" he whispered. Brian closed his eyes, heart tightening. He's afraid of something or someone. John stood abruptly, shaking his head. "No, this isn't about fear of a person. This is internal. Something's going on with him, and he doesn't want us to see it." The room froze as the weight of John's theory sank in. Meanwhile, miles away, Freddie walked through the Englischer Garten, Munich's sprawling urban forest, a place where he'd once found peace. Tonight, however, the trees seemed to lean in closer, their branches whispering secrets he wasn't ready to hear. He shoved his hands deeper into the pockets of his coat, shoulders curling inward from a chill that wasn't coming from the air. His breath puffed in soft clouds as he crossed a wooden bridge over a narrow stream, the moon reflecting fractured pieces of light across the water. His footsteps crunched through gravel until he reached a lone payphone standing beside a dim street lamp, a relic, something comforting in its simplicity. He lifted the receiver. For a moment, he just listened to the empty hum of the line, the sound of nowhere and everywhere. He wanted to call Brian. He wanted to call Roger. He wanted to tell someone what had been eating at him for weeks. The strange exhaustion, the breaths that felt shorter, the fear he kept pushing aside. But he wasn't ready. Not yet. Not when the truth was still forming inside him like a storm cloud he couldn't read. He hung up without dialing. As he turned to walk deeper into the park, something shifted in the darkness behind him. A soft crack, a branch snapping under a footstep. Freddie froze. He wasn't alone. He looked over his shoulder, eyes narrowed, heart pounding. A silhouette stood a few yards away, not threatening but hesitant, as if unsure whether to approach. Freddie's voice came out low, cautious. "Who's there?" The figure stepped into the faint light. It wasn't Fan. It wasn't paparazzi. It was Elena, the same pianist who had once encouraged him during a difficult rehearsal months earlier. Someone who understood music, and maybe something more. She stood bundled in a wool coat, eyes wide with worry. "Freddie," she whispered, breath visible in the cold. His shoulders dropped with relief. "Darling, what on earth are you doing here?" "I came to find you," she said. "Your band is terrified. And she hesitated. "I heard your message. You sounded lost." Freddie turned away, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't want anyone to hear me like that." Elena walked closer, not intruding, just offering presence. "You don't have to go through anything alone." Freddie opened his mouth to respond, but a loud rumble of thunder rolled across the sky, cutting through the moment. The storm he had sensed earlier was finally arriving. A cold wind swept across the park. Elena stepped closer. "Freddie, please tell me what's happening." He clenched his jaw. His eyes filled, not with tears, but with truth he couldn't contain much longer. "Elena, I think something is wrong with me." Lightning flashed. Thunder cracked, and the night swallowed the words. Thunder rolled through the trees like a warning from somewhere ancient, somewhere older than music itself. Lightning sliced across the sky, illuminating Freddie Mercury's face for a split second, enough for Elena to see the tremor in his expression, the vulnerability he worked so hard to hide from the world. He stood beneath a sprawling oak tree, breath unsteady, hands trembling slightly in the pockets of his coat. Elena, shivering from a mix of cold and fear, took a hesitant step toward him. "Freddie," she said softly, What do you mean something is wrong? Freddie swallowed hard. His eyes darted away, toward the dark path stretching deeper into the Englisher garden. A path he had walked countless times, yet tonight felt like an edge, a precipice. For weeks now, he began slowly, I've felt off. He pressed a hand to his chest, fingers curling over his shirt. My energy is different. My breath is shorter. My body feels like it's whispering things I don't want to hear. Elena's eyes widened. Have you seen a doctor? Freddie let out a bitter laugh, not mocking, but defeated. I keep telling myself it's exhaustion, stress, overwork. You know me. I burned the candle at both ends and then set the candle on fire for good measure. He tried to smile, but the humor fell flat. Elena stepped closer. But you think it might be something else. A gust of wind tore through the branches, scattering leaves around them like fragments of a broken song. Freddie looked at her then, really looked, and she saw the fear he had been trying to outrun all night. Elena, he whispered, I'm scared it's something I can't control. The admission hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Freddie Mercury was many things. Fearless reformer, unstoppable creative force, king of charisma, but never vulnerable. Not publicly, not privately. Almost no one saw him like this. Elena blinked away the sting of tears. She didn't want to overwhelm him, didn't want to break the fragile moment of honesty forming between them. Then let me help you, she said gently. Let us help you. Brian, Roger, John, they're your family. They want to know. But Freddie shook his head violently. No, he said. Not yet. Not until I'm sure. I can't put that weight on them. Not when we're on the edge of something big again. They need stability. The band needs momentum. And you? Elena asked quietly. Freddie looked up at the stormy sky. I don't know what I need, he admitted. But I know I had to get away tonight before everything inside me exploded. Lightning cracked again, closer this time. Rain began to fall in cold, heavy drops, dotting Freddie's shoulders and soaking into his hair. Elena shivered. We shouldn't stay out in this weather, she said. Come with me. I'll take you somewhere safe. You shouldn't be alone. Freddie hesitated. The instinct to run, to flee into shadows of the park and avoid confronting the truth, was still there, clawing at him. But another instinct, quieter and more fragile, tugged in Elena's direction. He exhaled slowly. Where will we go? There's a cafe near the university, she said. It stays open all night. Hardly anyone goes there. We can talk where it's warm. Freddie considered it, and for a moment he nodded. But then a ringing sound cut through the rain. A payphone. The same payphone Freddie had used earlier, its shrill tones slicing through the darkness like a warning or a summons. He froze. Elena looked at him, confused. Freddie? What is it? Freddie took a step back. His breathing quickened. His voice dropped to a hoarse whisper. No one knows this number. The phone rang again. And again. Each ring felt heavier, more urgent. Elena grabbed his arm. Don't answer it. But Freddie's eyes were locked on the dimly lit booth. I have to. Why? Freddie swallowed. Because this isn't the first time it happened. Elena's heart jolted. What do you mean? Freddie stepped toward the booth. Twice this week, in different parts of Munich, a payphone rang the moment I walked by. The rain intensified, hammering the metal roof of the booth as Freddie stepped inside. Elena followed, hovering at the entrance, torn between staying and pulling him away. Freddie's trembling hand lifted the receiver. He pressed it to his ear. Hello, he whispered. Static crackled on the other end, a deep, rolling hum that made Elena's skin crawl. Freddie's eyes widened as a distorted voice emerged, faint but unmistakably real. Freddie. Freddie nearly dropped the receiver. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Who is it? The voice continued, strained, urgent, as if speaking across a great distance. You can't run from this. Freddie's pulse thrashed in his veins. Who are you? A pause. A heavy exhale. Then, you know who I am. Elena pressed a hand to her mouth. Freddie's voice cracked. No, this isn't real. The voice sharpened suddenly. Go home, before it's too late. Lightning flashed directly overhead. The line went dead. Freddie stared at the phone, face white as marble. Elena grabbed his shoulders. "Freddie, we have to leave. Now." But Freddie wasn't listening. His mind was spiraling. Try to make sense of the impossible. The voice, the timing, the message. He felt the world tilt beneath him. "Elena," he whispered, barely audible, "I know that voice." She froze. Whose voice was it? Freddie closed his eyes, rain dripping from his lashes like tears. It was mine. Freddie Mercury stumbled out of the phone booth as if the ground beneath him had tilted. Rain hammered the pavement, running in shimmering rivers around his shoes. Elena reached for him immediately, gripping his arm to steady him. But he pulled away, not harshly, but as though he didn't know how to let anyone touch him while his mind reeled in chaos. "Freddie, look at me," Elena pleaded, water streaming down her face. "What did you hear?" He shook his head, soap curls clinging to his forehead. "It can't be real. It can't be." His voice cracked. "I know my own voice. Every note, every breath. That was me. Elena, that was me." A violent tremor went through him, not from the cold. Elena stepped closer, her voice trembling but steady. Voices can sound similar over bad lines. Static can distort sound. You're exhausted under pressure. "No." Freddie's refusal cut like a blade. "No, Elena. I've sung in studios for half my life. I recognize every layer of my voice, even when it's weak, even when it's strained." He pressed a trembling hand to his forehead. "I know myself." Lightning cracked above, illuminating the fear etched into his features. Elena softened, but she didn't retreat. "Then what do you think it means?" "Freddie, someone could be imitating you. Someone could be playing a cruel joke." Freddie laughed, but it wasn't amused. It was hollow. "Who would know I'd be here? Who would call this exact payphone at the precise moment I walked by? It's not coincidence. It's not a prank." Another flash of lightning illuminated the park, revealing swaying branches and an empty path stretching into darkness. Elena shivered. "We shouldn't stay here. Whatever this is, we need to think clearly, not out in a storm." Freddie forced himself to breathe. Yes, let's go." But as he stepped out of the booth, he paused, staring back at the phone as if it might ring again. Elena tugged gently at his sleeve. "Come on." They began walking to the rain, their footsteps crunching through gravel. The storm was worsening. Thunder boomed overhead with a rage that made the ground vibrate. Freddie's clothes clung to his skin, and though he usually loved dramatic weather, tonight it felt like the world was echoing the turmoil inside him. When they reached a small stone bridge, Freddie stopped abruptly. "Elena," he whispered, voice trembling. "What if I'm losing myself?" She turned to face him fully. "You're not." "You didn't hear what I heard," he said, voice breaking. "It wasn't just familiar. It was intimate. It was like hearing a version of myself that knew something I haven't admitted yet." Elena felt her heart tighten. "What haven't you admitted?" Freddie stared at the dark waters below the bridge, rain splashing into the current, distorting the reflections. "That something's changing," he said softly. "Inside me, and I don't know how to stop it." He pressed a hand to his chest again, fingers trembling. "I've been ignoring the signs, telling myself it's nothing, that it's stress or lack of sleep. But what if it's more? What if that voice on the phone is what I'm becoming? Another me, a weaker me." Elena shook her head, firm now. "Freddie, you are not a premonition. You are not a ghost haunting yourself. Whatever you heard, whoever called, it's not supernatural. It's not you predicting your own future." Freddie didn't answer, not because he disagreed, but because he wasn't sure he believed himself anymore. They walked again, this time toward a faint glow in the distance, the small all-night cafe Elena mentioned earlier. As they approached, the warm, golden light spilling through the windows felt like a lifeline amid the chaos of the storm. Inside, the cafe was nearly empty, just a man reading a newspaper and a woman wiping down the counter. Elena guided Freddie to a table near the window. He sank into the chair, head falling into his hands. Elena sat across from him. "Talk to me," she urged. "Tell me everything." Freddie stared at the candle flickering on the table. Do you believe, he said slowly, that sometimes your instincts know something before your mind does? Elena hesitated. Yes, I suppose so. Freddie looked up, eyes glistening. Then my instincts are screaming at me. They've been whispering for weeks, but tonight they're shouting. He leaned back, looking utterly exhausted. When the voice said, "You can't run from this," Elena, I felt it. It wasn't a threat. It was truth. Elena leaned forward, gripping his hand. Freddie, whatever is happening, we'll face it together. But you need to breathe. You need to rest. He nodded, but the tension didn't leave his shoulders. Before they could say more, the cafe door swung open violently. Rain and wind rushed in. Roger Taylor stood at the entrance, drenched, breathless, panic written across his face. Freddie. Freddie flinched at the sound of his name. Roger scanned the room, spotted him, and hurried over. Thank God, he breathed, grabbing Freddie's shoulders. Do you have any idea what you've done to us tonight? We thought we didn't know if... But he stopped when he saw Freddie's expression. What happened? Roger whispered. Freddie opened his mouth to respond, but tears welled up unexpectedly. He quickly wiped them away, furious with himself. Roger's face fell. Freddie, what's going on? Elena spoke before Freddie could. He got a phone call from... Freddie interrupted sharply. Don't. Roger looked between them, confused, worried, almost afraid. Freddie, who called you? Freddie inhaled, chest tight, voice breaking apart. A voice, he said. A voice that sounded like... He hesitated, trembling. Roger leaned in. Like who? Freddie whispered the words that froze Roger in place. Like me. Roger stared, stunned. Come on, that's impossible. Freddie shook his head. No, Rog. It wasn't just similar. It was me. Roger swallowed hard, his expression shifting from disbelief to something darker. Freddie, what exactly did this voice say? Freddie closed his eyes. It told me I can't run from what's coming. The cafe fell silent. A storm raged outside, and inside, a different kind of storm began to rise. The air inside the cafe felt heavier than the storm outside, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Freddie Mercury sat between Elena and Roger, rain dripping from his curls, hands trembling slightly on the wooden table. The candle between them flickered wildly, casting long shadows across his face, the kind of shadows that looked like truths trying to escape. Roger had gone pale. His eyes darted between Freddie and Elena, searching for a logical explanation, though logic had no place in the night they were living. A voice, Roger repeated slowly, that sounded like you. Freddie nodded. Roger swallowed hard. And it told you that you can't run from what's coming. Freddie held his friend's gaze, waiting, because Roger's reaction wasn't confusion. It was recognition. What do you know, Rog? Freddie demanded. Roger leaned back, chest rising with a deep breath he didn't want to release. Freddie, there's something we've been talking about. Something the rest of the band noticed. We didn't want to corner you. We didn't want to scare you. Freddie stiffened. What are you talking about? Brian walked into the cafe at that exact moment, drenched, breathless, eyes wide with worry. He spotted the table instantly and hurried over. Freddie, thank God, Brian said, placing a hand on Freddie's back. We've been searching everywhere. Are you... He stopped when he saw Roger's expression. Did you tell him? Brian asked quietly. Not yet, Roger replied. Freddie's voice sharpened. Tell me what? The two bandmates exchanged a painful look, the kind that only men who have shared decades of music, heartbreak, and brotherhood can understand. Brian pulled out a chair and sat opposite Freddie, his eyes softening with something deep, compassion, and fear. Freddie, Brian began, we've noticed some things lately, on stage, in rehearsals, in recordings. Freddie's stomach tightened. What things? Roger took a steadying breath. You're pushing yourself harder than ever, but you're also getting tired faster. You've been losing weight. You've been short of breath. And during the last session, Brian shot Roger a warning glance. Roger shook his head. No, he needs to know. Freddie's voice was barely audible. During the last session, what? Brian leaned forward, lowering his voice. You fainted for a moment, Freddie. Just a second, but you grabbed the piano to keep yourself upright. Freddie blinked slowly, stunned. I just got dizzy. Dizzy? Roger repeated, frustrated. Freddie, you were white as a sheet. You brushed it off, made a joke, and kept recording. But we saw it. It wasn't nothing. Freddie's pulse quickened. His mind tried to reject their words, but his body remembered that moment. The sudden rush of weakness, the world spinning before snapping back into place. He pretended it meant nothing. Brian continued softly. We didn't say anything because we didn't want to pressure you. But after that, we've all been worried. Freddie swallowed, staring at his reflection in the cafe window. Pale, rain-soaked, eyes holding a truth he didn't want to face. Elena reached for his hand. Freddie, this is why the phone call affected you so deeply. Because you already knew something was wrong. That voice didn't tell you anything new. It only echoed what you've been afraid to admit. Freddie's breath hitched. Silence thickened between them until Freddie finally whispered, I've been feeling weaker. Roger closed his eyes with a pained expression. Brian said, then we face it. We go to a doctor. We run tests. We stay by your side. But Freddie shook his head instantly, too quickly. No, not yet. Freddie, Brian began. I said no, Freddie insisted, stronger this time. I won't live my life inside hospitals. I won't feed rumors. I won't let the press tear me apart before I even know the truth. His voice cracked, but his pride held the last line like a shield. Roger leaned forward, voice gentle but firm. We're not the press. We're your brothers. Freddie squeezed his eyes shut. Brothers? Yes, and he loved them fiercely. I need time, Freddie whispered. A little more time before I know what this is. Brian nodded slowly. We'll give you time, but not distance. You won't run from us. Freddie looked down, ashamed. I wasn't running from you. I was running from myself. At that, Elena squeezed his hand tighter. The storm outside intensified, rain pounding against the windows with the rhythm of a heartbeat gone wild. Then suddenly, Brian's head snapped toward the counter. Did you hear that? Roger turned. What? A telephone behind the counter, an old beige landline, began to ring. The barista looked surprised. That phone almost never rings at night. Freddie's blood went cold. Elena whispered, Freddie? Roger stood up immediately. No, he's not answering. Not this time. But Freddie's eyes were locked on the phone. The first payphone call had been impossible enough. But this? Another phone, another untraceable number, another impossible coincidence? The bartender reached for the receiver. Freddie stood abruptly. Wait. Brian grabbed Freddie's arm. Don't do this. Freddie's voice was hollow. If it's the same voice. Freddie, you're scaring yourself, Roger insisted. But Freddie shook free, walking slowly toward the counter. The phone rang again, and again, as if calling for him. He reached out. His fingers hovered above the receiver. Trembling, he lifted it, placed it against his ear. Hello, Freddie whispered. A beat of silence. Then his own voice replied, Freddie, you're running out of time. The receiver slipped slightly in Freddie's hand. Roger gasped. Elena covered her mouth. Brian froze. And then the line cut out. Dead. Freddie stood there shaking, breath shallow. Elena rushed to him. Freddie, what does it mean? He turned slowly, eyes filled with terror and revelation. That wasn't imitation, Freddie whispered. That voice, it wasn't coming from someone else. Roger asked, trembling, Then who? Freddie answered, It was coming from somewhere inside me. The cafe had grown impossibly quiet, the kind of silence that feels alive, like a presence waiting in the dark corners of the room. Freddie Mercury stood frozen with the phone still in his hand, knuckles white, breath trembling. Elena, Roger, and Brian stared at him, unable to process what just happened. Freddie's own voice coming through a second phone line in a new location. At a new time, it defied logic, but it wasn't imagination. They had all heard the faint echo of it, distorted, eerie, unmistakably carrying the texture of Freddie's tone. Freddie lowered the receiver slowly, placing it back into its cradle like one would place a fragile relic. His fingers hovered above it for a moment before finally pulling away. Roger broke the silence first. "Freddie, this isn't normal." His voice cracked at the edges. "What's happening to you?" Freddie swallowed hard, eyes locked on the floor. "I told you, something inside me is changing." His words were barely audible, but heavy with meaning. Brian pushed his chair back and knelt in front of Freddie, taking his hands gently. "Look at me," he said softly. Freddie hesitated, then raised his eyes full of torment, fear, and something deeper, resignation. Brian continued, "We'll face whatever this is, but you have to tell us everything. No more running." Freddie closed his eyes. A single tear escaped, sliding down his cheek. He didn't wipe it. "There have been signs," he whispered. "Whispers in the back of my mind. Moments where I feel like someone else is thinking the same thought as me, but faster, earlier, as if I'm falling behind myself." Elena stepped closer, heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Freddie exhaled shakily. "Moments when I feel like my body moves a second slower than my mind. Moments where a lyric comes to me, but the voice inside me sings it before I do." He looked at them with raw pain. "I thought it was exhaustion or stress. But tonight, those calls..." Elena's eyes softened. "You think they're connected?" Freddie nodded. Roger let out a frustrated breath. "Freddie, this isn't you talking. You're tired, stressed, overwhelmed." "No." Freddie's voice cut through the room, quiet but undeniable. "No, Roger." That voice predicted his own call. It told me I was running out of time. It wasn't mocking me. It wasn't scaring me. It was warning me. Roger ran a hand through his soaked blonde hair, struggling to keep his composure. "Warn you about what?" Freddie hesitated. Then he said it, the fear that had been building inside him for weeks. "My health." Brian and Roger both stiffened. Elena gasped softly. Freddie continued, voice fragile. "I haven't been feeling like myself. I get tired too easily. My throat burns on notes that never hurt before. Some mornings, I wake up feeling like I've lived an entire day before even opening my eyes. And then there are moments when my breath just stops cooperating." He placed a trembling hand on his chest. "Tonight wasn't about running from you. It was about running from the truth inside me." Roger's expression cracked into naked fear. "Freddie, why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wasn't ready to admit it," Freddie said. "If I said it out loud, it would become real. And I wasn't prepared for reality." Brian squeezed his hands tighter. "We're here. You don't have to face this alone." Freddie pulled his hands away slowly, trembling. "But maybe I do." "Why?" Elena asked, tears forming. Freddie stared into the candle flame on the table, as if answers lay in its flickering light. "Because tonight proved something," he said quietly. "Something I didn't want to believe." He stood abruptly, pacing the floor, running his hands through his hair. That voice wasn't just fear. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't a hallucination. He turned to them, eyes burning. It was a part of me, ahead of me, a version of myself already accepting what I've been refusing to face. Brian's heart dropped. "Freddie, you think those calls are your subconscious?" "Not subconscious," Freddie whispered. "Conscious. Fully aware. Trying to break through." Roger slammed his fist on the table. "Freddie, you're scaring the hell out of us." "Good," Freddie snapped. "Because I'm scared too. I've never felt anything like this. It's like my own voice is trying to warn me that my time, is shorter than I want to admit." Tears now streamed down Elena's face. "Freddie, please don't say that." He stepped toward her and gently touched her cheek, wiping the tears away with trembling fingers. "I don't want it to be true," he whispered. "But every instinct in me says something is coming. Something I can't outrun. And those phone calls, they're the part of me that already knows." The cafe was silent again. Rain battered the windows. Thunder growled low and distant, like an omen, Roger finally sat down, his voice small. "Freddie, what we do now?" Freddie didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the window and pressed his palm against the cold glass. Outside, the world looked blurry, twisted by raindrops, distorted by fear and the weight of revelation. Finally, he whispered, "I need to face whatever this is. I need to know the truth about my health." He turned toward them, eyes haunted but steady. "But I'm afraid that truth is already trying to speak to me." Brian stood. "We'll schedule tests immediately." Freddie nodded. "Tomorrow, first thing." Roger exhaled with relief. But Freddie lifted a finger. "There's something else," he said. "Something worse." Their hearts sank. Freddie's voice dropped to a whisper. "That voice! It wasn't warning me about my health." Brian frowned. "Then what was it warning you about?" Freddie took a shaky breath. "It was warning me." He closed his eyes. "That something is going to happen to me very soon." The candle flickered violently. Roger whispered, "What kind of something?" Freddie opened his eyes, and they were filled with a terror none of them had ever seen in him. "I don't know," he said, "but whatever it is, I won't be able to stop it."